December 8, 1941. The sun barely peeks over the horizon, casting a pale, trembling light across Wake Island. Waves crash against the jagged coral reef, their roar mingling with the faint hum of distant aircraft engines. The island is small, just 3 square miles of sand, palms, and sparse concrete bunkers, but today it feels like the entire world is poised to descend upon it. Lieutenant Commander Henry Elrod, his uniform dusted with the island's dry grit, crouches behind a makeshift barricade of sandbags and steel beams. His eyes track the sky, scanning for the first hints of movement. Alongside him, a handful of Marines and Navy personnel check rifles, machine guns, and the few light artillery pieces that could stand against the approaching storm. Every man knows that they are outnumbered, outgunned, and yet, somehow, they must hold the line. The first Japanese bombers appear as tiny specks above the horizon, growing into dark silhouettes as they descend. The air vibrates with the distant thrum of engine, the metallic whistle of bombs cutting toward the coral airstrip, and the sharp crack of machine gun fire that is barely enough to deter them. Sailors scramble along the sandy path, moving crates of ammunition and oil drums to fortify crumbling bunkers. Every improvised barricade, every hastily dug trench, represents the ingenuity and desperation of men determined not to surrender without a fight. Private First Class James "Jimmy" Hawkins wipes sweat from his brow as he peers through binoculars, spotting a flight of Japanese A-6M0s swooping toward the eastern perimeter. "They're coming in low," he shouts. The island's air defense is sparse, just a few 5-inch guns manned by exhausted Navy gunners. Yet even in these dire circumstances, every round fired carries the weight of defiance. The first bombs fall, sending sprays of sand and coral into the air, yet the Marines hold their fire until the enemy crosses the line of engagement. Engineer crews, led by Lieutenant Commander Elrod himself, are already reconfiguring what remains of the airstrip defenses. They pile sandbags into shell craters, drag metal planking over weakened structures, and rig improvised flamethrower positions to guard against landing troops. Every modification is a gamble, a patchwork solution meant to delay the inevitable, but delay is all they have. The island may be tiny, but here, courage and ingenuity expand the perimeter of resistance far beyond its physical boundary. The roar of Japanese bombers grows deafening. The first salvo lands near the Marine barracks, shaking the ground and sending men sprawling. Elrod presses his back against the bunker wall, issuing orders calmly but firmly. "Man the anti-aircraft. Hold the line. Don't let them take the runway." The men respond with grim determination, rifles cracking, machine guns stuttering bursts into the blue. Each hit on a plane, each deflected strafing run, is a small victory against overwhelming odds. As the morning wears on, the island becomes a tableau of chaos and ingenuity. The smell of salt, smoke, and cordite fills the air. Coral dust coats every surface. Men work tirelessly, improvising barriers, repairing wreckage, and firing from the shadows. Even as Japanese bombers dive again and again, Wake Island resists, its defenders defying what seemed impossible. They are not merely holding a strip of sand. They are creating a fortress out of determination, grit, and sheer ingenuity, refusing to surrender to the enormity of the enemy force.
By mid-morning, the Japanese assault intensifies. A squadron of Type 97 bombers sweeps in low over the eastern side of the island, engines screaming, wings slicing through the humid tropical air. On the ground, Private Hawkins ducks behind a hastily erected barricade, gripping his M1903 Springfield rifle like it's a lifeline. Sandbags shudder under near misses, splintering into fragments that sting exposed skin. Each explosion sends showers of coral dust into the air, stinging eyes and mouths, yet the defenders remain steadfast. Lieutenant Commander Elrod coordinates the Marines' positions with meticulous precision. He knows the terrain intimately, every ridge, every cluster of coconut palms, every shell crater, and uses it to funnel the enemy toward kill zones. "Hold your fire until they're over the coral reef," he barks, voice cutting over the roar of the incoming planes. From concealed positions, machine guns open up in synchronized bursts, cutting into the sides of the bombers. One Japanese aircraft falters, trailing smoke, before spiraling into the shallow lagoon below. Meanwhile, Navy engineers work feverishly to reinforce the island's remaining bunkers. Concrete has cracked under repeated bombardments, wooden supports splintered by shock waves. With limited supplies, they drag oil drums and sandbags into vulnerable positions, layering them with steel plates salvaged from destroyed structures. Lieutenant Commander Elrod inspects a bunker near the airstrip, noting a gap where shrapnel has punched through. "Plug it with coral and timber," he orders. If it's strong enough to keep a man inside alive, it'll do the job. The Japanese attempt their first landing along the western beach by mid-afternoon. Hundreds of Marines and sailors take positions in camouflaged foxholes, trenches, and reinforced pillboxes. From behind twisted metal barricades, Corporal Thomas Riley fires a Browning automatic rifle into the surf, targeting the small boats as they move closer. Explosions rock the sand as improvised mines and anti-boat obstacles tear into the advancing force. Yet for every enemy boat destroyed, more appear. The defenders are exhausted, but adrenaline keeps them moving, ducking, firing, reinforcing, and improvising at a pace that belies their small numbers. The island itself becomes an ally. Dense palm clusters provide cover for sniper positions, while coral ridges channel the attackers into kill zones. Elrod instructs men to use flamethrowers and Molotov cocktails to block likely landing points. The heat from improvised incendiaries mixes with the tropical sun, turning sections of sand into a near furnace. Japanese soldiers, expecting an easy landing on a tiny Pacific atoll, are met instead with unexpected resistance at every step. As night falls, Wake Island is scarred but not broken. Smoke drifts from the airstrip, wreckage litters the beaches, and the moans of wounded echo across the sand. Still, the defenders have held, delaying the Japanese advance longer than anyone could have imagined. Every bunker, every trench, every improvised obstacle tells the story of ingenuity under fire. Against impossible odds, the Marines and sailors have turned a battered atoll into a last-stand fortress. December 9, 1941. Dawn breaks over Wake Island with a pale, uneasy light. The coral beaches are littered with debris, shattered landing craft, twisted metal, and the remnants of Japanese bombs that failed to claim their mark. The defenders, though bruised and bloodied, are already at work. Lieutenant Commander Elrod moves between bunkers, issuing calm, precise orders, his eyes scanning the horizon for any hint of the next attack. His voice is steady, but each man knows the island has become a pressure cooker of exhaustion, fear, and determination. Supplies are dangerously low. Food and water are rationed to bare minimums, and ammunition is measured in single-digit counts for some weapons. Private Hawkins digs another trench near the eastern perimeter, using coral rocks to reinforce its walls. He glances at his fellow Marines, sweat-streaked faces, sunburned necks, trembling hands clutching rifles, but eyes blazing with resolve. The men have no illusions. Reinforcements are hundreds of miles away, and escape is impossible. Yet they hold. By mid-morning, the Japanese begin a sustained bombardment from their carriers. High-altitude bombers release payloads with devastating accuracy. Concrete bunkers shudder under the impact, sandbags collapse, and smoke curls in dense plumes across the island. Still, the defenders fight back with what they have: 5-inch guns, .50 caliber machine guns, and every improvised weapon they can muster. Corporal Riley targets a Zero attempting a strafing run, his machine gun spitting fire until the plane swerves in shock, barely avoiding a collision with the coral reef. Elrod directs engineers to strengthen weakened points with anything at hand: planks, steel scraps, even empty fuel drums stuffed with sand. The island is transformed into a labyrinth of improvised fortifications. Flamethrowers guard narrow beach approaches, makeshift barricades funnel any attackers into pre-sighted kill zones, and every trench is angled to maximize crossfire. It is not perfection, it is desperation, but it is enough. The Japanese launch their second landing attempt that afternoon. Hundreds of troops sweep toward the western shore, expecting little resistance. They are met with a torrent of fire. Marines in camouflaged positions open up with rifles and machine guns, while flamethrowers ignite brush and sand, turning the beach into a hellish gauntlet. Each landing craft that reaches the coral beach is damaged or destroyed. Lieutenant Commander Elrod moves between positions, rallying men, coordinating artillery, and personally firing at the advancing enemy. His presence becomes a symbol of defiance, a single figure embodying the island's stubborn resistance. Despite constant bombardment, the men continue to repair craters, reinforce bunkers, and redistribute ammunition. Wounded are dragged to safer positions, and engineers fashion improvised stretchers from scrap metal and canvas. Every hour, The island's defenders delay the Japanese timetable, frustrating their attackers who expected a quick, easy victory. For the first time, the Japanese commanders are forced to acknowledge the resilience of a handful of Marines and Navy personnel on a tiny atoll. As night falls, Wake Island is enveloped in smoke and embers. The coral beaches glow faintly under fires that continue to burn. The men huddle in bunkers, exhausted but unbroken. They know tomorrow will bring more attacks, more bombs, more death. But they also know they have done the impossible. They have turned a bunker-ravaged atoll into a fortress, a symbol of courage and ingenuity against overwhelming odds. December 11, 1941. The morning sun rises over Wake Island, cutting through the smoke that still lingers from previous bombardments. The defenders are weary, their faces etched with grime, sweat, and determination. Lieutenant Commander Elrod walks along the battered airstrip, inspecting sandbagged bunkers and directing Marines as they reposition artillery to cover the northern approaches. The island may be small, but every square foot is vital, every trench a line in the sand against the relentless Japanese advance. Japanese carriers launch their largest assault yet. Hundreds of aircraft roar overhead, strafing positions and dropping bombs in unrelenting waves. Coral dust and shrapnel fill the air, stinging skin and eyes alike. Private Hawkins ducks into a trench as a nearby explosion throws a shower of sand and debris over him. Even in the chaos, the Marines respond with precision. Anti-aircraft guns blaze, rifles crack, and every bunker pours fire onto the enemy. One A6M0 trails smoke before spiraling into the lagoon. Another crashes onto the beach, igniting a small fire that the defenders cautiously circle to scavenge ammunition. The Japanese attempt to land troops again along the western beaches. Lieutenant Commander Elrod and his men are ready. Flamethrowers roar to life, trenches erupt with machine gun fire, and improvised explosive charges detonate beneath landing craft. Marines move like shadows, appearing from hidden bunkers to cut down advancing soldiers. Even the wounded continue to fight. Corporal Riley, bandaged and bloodied, mans a .50 caliber gun as if the pain were another obstacle to overcome rather than a threat to life. The island shakes under the weight of bombardment and gunfire, yet Wake refuses to yield. Every obstacle, every improvised barricade, every coral-filled bunker forces the Japanese to adapt, slowing their advance and inflicting unexpected casualties. Lieutenant Commander Elrod coordinates counterattacks, directing men to target weak points in the enemy's formation. His ingenuity transforms desperation into tactical advantage, making the defenders appear far larger than their numbers. But the relentless pressure begins to tell. Ammunition dwindles. Some guns are destroyed, and fatigue gnaws at every Marine. The Japanese, frustrated by repeated failures, press harder, bringing heavier artillery and more aircraft into the fray. Still, Wake Island holds, a battered fortress of sand, coral, and sheer determination. The defenders' courage delays the Japanese timetable, forcing them to reconsider the seemingly effortless victory they had expected from a tiny Pacific atoll. As the sun sinks toward the horizon, the island is scarred beyond recognition. Fires smolder, bunkers are cracked and splintered, and the air is thick with the smell of salt, smoke, and cordite. Yet, in the midst of devastation, the men of Wake Island remain defiant. They have turned what the Japanese assumed would be a quick conquest into a grueling battle of attrition, demonstrating that ingenuity, courage, and unyielding spirit can make even a small, isolated outpost into a formidable fortress.